Hi, to inaugurate this new exclusive Amiga games series I've prepared only good games for the first episode. But I'm not gonna discriminate in the future ones, so you'll get to learn about those that are not that great too. They will all be interesting for one reason or another, however, so there's that. For now though, without further ado, let's see what the gaming experiences never landed on other systems of yore. It's difficult to imagine that Agony came out in 1992, especially if you get to experience it today on a high-resolution flat screen. It's pure beauty, it's art. A literal agony of colors that looks beyond fantastic. It's a masterpiece, and an excellent title to start this video with. But Psygnosis did have a flair for extraordinary, and it clearly shows in this game too. What Agony also is a horizontally scrolling shoot 'em up. You play as Magician's Apprentice, yes, not wizards, not warlocks or sorcerers, but magicians, and yeah, there is a difference between them. A Magician's Apprentice is that lady that David Blaine cuts in half, or Copperfield really. Blaine did other stuff. So yeah, you're said apprentice and you're turned into an owl to destroy the dark creatures invading the beautiful land, and eventually learn of the so-called cosmic strength. Questionable logic of picking all rather than the human form as the deadlier one aside, Agony is great. It features 6 pretty long levels with beautifully animated and parallax scrolling backgrounds, dozens of different enemies, consisting mainly of various deadly insects and animals, and weapon upgrades, if you could call them that, as you're not really shooting a weapon but magical projectiles. Agony's presentation, as you can see, is phenomenal. It's on another level and something that could hardly be replicated on any other system in 1992, at least not running on a 7 MHz CPU. The sprites are huge and nicely animated, there's a lot of them on the screen at once, and the backgrounds are as good, if not better. Sounds and music are also spot on and round up this gaming package nicely. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Agony is beautiful, but is it fun? After all, it's not the graphics but the gameplay that makes or breaks the title. And I'm happy to say that yes it is. It's definitely not the best shoot 'em up on the Amiga, but it's a really good one, and easily one of the better looking, especially if you keep in mind that it runs on all, even most basic Amigas provided they have at least 1 MB of RAM. It's a classic. After Doom landed on PC, Amiga users contracted a probably much more severe case of the Doom fever than PC gamers ever had, because Doom on PC required a beefy hardware and nothing else. On Amiga, given its architecture, we were told that it was impossible to pull off. Naturally, a statement like that invites a challenge, and many devs strived to prove that it actually was doable. And while technically speaking it ended up being quote-unquote possible, the architecture really did not support the efforts, and the games were usually running slow and had considerable hardware requirements, often outside of monetary capabilities of a regular Amiga gamer. Alien Breed 3D2, The Killing Grounds, is the last Team 17's game on the Amiga, and it kinda shows as it feels a bit rushed and unoptimized. But other than that, extremely polished and competent effort. At the time of its release, it was easily in the top 3 Doom clones on the Ami. It starts directly after the first game ended and drops you right into fast and frantic action, which is built out of 16 levels that, while linear, are all quite fun and real interestingly designed, keeping you on the edge of your seat all throughout. There's obviously obligatory keycards that you need to find to progress, so while simple at its design, the environmental puzzling is present and as good as in the game Alien Breed 3.2 was based on. There's also 10 different weapons available, so you'll hardly ever get bored. Enemies seem to possess some kind of very basic AI, adjusting their approach and attacks depending on the weapon that you're wielding, so they won't run straight at you if you're carrying something that would mow them down in a second. Which may not seem like a lot, but it's a nice touch nonetheless. Sadly, there's no music during gameplay, but the ambient sounds more than make up for it, creating a silent, menacing atmosphere that is both exciting and terrifying. Alien Breed 3D2 has a rather hefty hardware requirements, and while it could theoretically be run on any AGA system with at least 2 MB of RAM, it's a nightmare to play in this configuration, as it will sport huge pixels and a stump-sized gameplay screen. To put things into perspective, a user going by the name of Karpov wrote on Lemon Amiga's website in the comments section for this game just a few days ago that he runs the game now on 68060 CPU overclocked to 100 MHz. So something that was rather improbable in 1996 when the game released, and that it can still run sluggish. I'm gonna be a bit controversial here, though it is my honest opinion. Alien Breed 3D2 should be played on the best Amiga out there, so a PC through emulation. Go ahead, destroy me in the comments below if you like it. But you know that for this game at least, I'm right. On April 30th, 2022, one Sideshow Bob, whose name I've no doubt butchered here beyond recognition, wrote this on Lemon Amiga's game page about Arabian Nights. If there ever was a game that needed a graphic overhaul and rebalancing, this is it. It sits on the edge of greatness, but doesn't quite make it. I couldn't have put it better myself. These two sentences summarize the game perfectly. It's a title that does everything well: graphics, sound, level design and gameplay, everything, but nothing exceptional. And while it's definitely one of the most unique and memorable platformers on the Amiga, it's short of these few last coats of polish, paint, or whatever you wanna call it, for ascension to something bigger, better, and more unforgettable. Made by the team that brought us Soccer Kid, Arabian Nights is unusually for the 90s themed platformer with heavy Middle Eastern culture influences present all throughout. And that's something that wasn't common back in the day. Come to think of it, I don't think it's much different now. Anyway, the game's built out of few differently stylized worlds split into smaller levels with occasional flying carpet shooter-like areas in between. It's quite varied and doesn't get stale all throughout its short, more or less an hour-long playthrough time. I remember playing Arabian Nights to death as a kid with a friend living 2 floors up in the same apartment building. It may have been one of the many games we've played together, but somehow it is the one that I ended up remembering fondly. Countless hours swapping joystick between us, playing a stage or life per person, never managing to complete it though. Fun. Also testament to how great of a gamer I was and am to this day. But all sentimental stuff and quote-unquote memories of better days aside, if that's even possible, other than the occasional honestly funny moments, Arabian Nights is just a typical platformer that does everything well. There's nothing it's much better at than others, but there is also nothing that it's particularly worse at either. It's a decent all-rounder and an excellent example of Amiga exclusive that could have gained much wider popularity if it ever released on other systems. Ambermoon is second after Amberstar in Talion's never-finished fantasy trilogy of excellent role-playing games. It begins over 50 years after the first game, with the world of Lyramyon just starting to recover after the events of the previous title. You play as a grandchild of the protagonist of Amberstar, who is now an elderly man and summons you to tell you of the vision that he had, and it's really a grim one. So, he sends you on a quest to figure out what's behind its meaning. While you start alone, over the course of the game you'll be able to recruit more characters for a total of 6, so it's best to build your party so that they all would complement each other. All their physical attributes can be trained, however, by finding an appropriate NPC teacher. So even if they're not perfect from the get-go, with a bit of care, they can become so eventually. Overworld traversal and most interiors are in top-down 2D view, while dungeons and the rest of the game is played in 3D first-person perspective. But unlike other role-playing games utilizing this viewpoint, the movement is not in step-by-step format, but entirely fluid and real-time. Combat is initiated when you meet the enemies and is also played in first-person perspective, but with use of tactical board and in my beloved turn-based mode. In Ambermoon, party formation is so important that having a properly placed characters may be a deciding factor in your wins and losses. So if you keep losing, experiment the hell out of it. Other than the overarching main quest, there's quite a few side tasks, and many of them will require some simple puzzle solving. They are not mandatory, but are fun and will help you raise your party's experience to be ready for the more challenging main quest. Ambermoon features a full day and night cycle that obviously influences what NPCs are available and where they are, as all of them have their own schedules, which may not be anything new in the genre, but is always a welcome addition. Characters have to eat and rest periodically to recover, and items get worn out and broken, and will require appropriate craftsmen to repair them. In dark areas and during nights, torches and lanterns are obviously a must and will illuminate the surroundings. The towns are large, more detailed than previously, and diverse. And in general, Ambermoon's world seems to be coherently put together to form a believable land with its history, lore, and races. Ambermoon is a challenging title, and each and every battle won feels like a well-earned achievement, and you will quickly no doubt form bonds with your teammates caring for their survival and not only for your mission. While perhaps not a very well-known game, Ambermoon was easily one of the best RPGs on the system, and it is well worth visiting even today, decades after its original release. Despite its very appealing and state-of-the-art graphics, at least for the platform it released on, Apocalypse is really just a glorified Choplifter clone. But oh my days, how amazing of a clone it is. Even if ungodly difficult and plagued by countless cheap deaths. In theory, Apocalypse is your Airwolf type of a game, so you have a generic evil rebel forces taking over a small island in the remote part of the ocean, and they imprisoned many of your allies that's stationed in the 5 of island's bases. Your task is as simple as they come. To destroy all of the bases, enemy units, be it mobile or ground, and the battleship docked somewhere on the island. Most of all, however, to save as many POWs as you can. And that's as much as it's easy about Apocalypse, as it feels like a game that would feel most comfortable on the cabinet in the arcades, happily munching on countless supply of coins from frustrated players' pockets. It's that tough. The overwhelming enemy forces, anti-aircraft rockets coming from off-screen all the time, and a rather large helicopter sprite as compared to the whole gameplay area are the main reasons for Apocalypse's challenge. So unless you're a god-level patient and can muster enough strength to approach it very cautiously and methodically, you're either gonna die a lot or get frustrated with it and rage quit. Sounds are exceptional and feature many supposedly small and unnecessary details, but as you play, in the heat of the action, even if they're separately undistinguishable from one another, all form a realistically unbelievably sounding jungle. And with painstakingly detailed backgrounds and sprites that all scream "Apocalypse now" from the screen, it makes you feel like you're actually in the movie, and that your in-game life is actually in danger at all times. Apocalypse is not for everyone, but if you like Souls-likes and side-view action games, it's a great mix, one of the best on the Amiga. Raven Software's Black Crypt is a culmination, a masterful achievement in step-by-step first-person party-based role-playing games genre on the Amiga. But what about Eye of the Beholder? Dungeon Master? Have you forgot about Dungeon Master? Hello? Ishtar Trilogy perhaps? And yes, you're right, they're all important, amazing and incredible games in their own rights. But Black Crypt is an exclusive, and the other landed on everything they could run on. There is even an unofficial Eye of the Beholder port on C64 now, which on a side note is something that I will have to take a closer look at in one of the future videos, cause that's a game that had no reason to run on a small 8-bit system, and yet it does. Anyway, coming back to Black Crypt. After being banished from the land of Astera, a powerful evil cleric, a store of Paingiver, a beautiful surname I must add, returns with a huge army of the undead and demons, and once again good prevails and the cleric is sealed away magically in the titular Black Crypt. 20-something years later, when the game takes place, he's attempting to break free from his magical shackles to get revenge on those who wronged him. You take control of 4 heroes, beacons of strength and good, and they must enter 28 levels deep dungeon to find 4 artifacts, powerful weapons that will be required to defeat the evil. I'm Batman! Bruce is saying that he's a beacon too, but judging by how he let himself go sitting on my couch eating snacks and doing pretty much nothing else, I'd say that he's closer to bacon than beacon. Whatever. You start the game by creating your party of 4, and they are a fighter, cleric, magic user and druid. Personally, if it was up to me and possible within the game, cause it's not, I would drop the druid for another heavy melee damage dealer. But it is what it is. All of them have some very basic equipment and food, as they have to eat and drink to survive. You know, like in real life. So you gotta collect all the food you find and make sure to refill your flask at all wells you come across. All the characters other than the fighter can cast different spells. The most important of them all, a wizard side spell, is basically an automap which will be more than useful all throughout your adventure. Other than the main quest, there's quite a few side ones, big and small, and they add a lot to the depth of gameplay and world building. Black Crypt's presentation is stellar. Sounds and music are of the highest quality and graphics are way above what even Eye of the Beholder or Ishtar games could offer, using Amiga's rarely utilized EHB mode, which allows for 32 unique colors to be used along with another 32, but at half brightness, for an overall palette of 64. I don't have to tell you that the environments look lush and detailed, even if they're basically just underground dungeons. But as you go deeper and deeper, the design changes, never letting you get bored with it. So unlike Dungeon Master, for instance, you never feel like you're looking at the same wall all the time. Black Crypt is an excellent title that all fans of classic RPGs should experience. Period. Breathless's story is so incredibly bad that I will summarize it with a couple of sentences only, as it's not worth time it will take me to do so in detail. Yours or mine. Human race has been enslaved, and while some still fight against the alien invaders, for the most part they're unsuccessful. And when these rebels are caught, they are remade into cyborgs and put into arenas to fight for their life, and potentially freedom. I don't know how stupid you'd have to be to believe that alien overlords would free you after first transforming you into a killing machine and then having you compete against others, just to prove that you're the best of the best out of them all. But whatever, it is what it is. Breathless is an AGA exclusive first-person shooter where you have to go through 20 increasingly more demanding stages, literally killing everything that pops up on the screen. An old rule, if it moves shoot it, applies here perfectly, cause if it moves, it wants you dead. As you dispose of countless enemies, you collect credits, which then later on can be used at computer terminals to purchase new or upgrade your current weapons. Naturally, as in most shooters, there's doors that impede your progress, and you either have to find keycards to open them or appropriate switches. While there's few weapons to choose from, they're not visible on the screen at all, and all you get is a crosshair, which makes the game feel a bit weird and getting a newer, better weapon less impactful. But that, to be honest, is a reoccurring theme in most Amiga Doom clones. Fortunately, the gameplay itself is quite fun, even if it gets start repetitive fast because of all the walls and all the enemies looking samey, all grey and bland. But and that's a pretty huge but for a rather quality-limited Amiga FPS scene. Breathless runs incredibly well on a basic A1200. Not great, mind you, but much better than it has any right to, and better than most of its competition. It obviously benefits from more powerful systems, turbo cards and extra RAM, all the shebang, but it's not unplayable on weaker configurations. All of Breathless's technical prowess and optimization, while undoubtedly impressive, cannot sadly change the fact that at the very best, because of it being so dull, it's only ever good fun for short gaming sessions. When Brian the Lion first came out in 1994, I had a lot of other platformers on my Amiga. So while I did get it as well, notably by rather unethical means, I did not find it any more interesting or better playing than these that I enjoyed already. So I disregarded it quickly and never gave it any real attention. Which, I can tell you now, was a mistake, as it's not only fun but also a pretty good game too, provided you get used to the controls, which sadly still feel a bit clunky and not as precise as in other games in the genre. You play as Brian the Lion, and you must rescue your friend Chris the Crystal from the evil Giza the Dragon who kidnapped him. But before you'll be able to do so, you'll have to plow through around 40 platforming stages and defeat Dragon's henchmen along the way, Barry the Bear and Graham the Gorilla. To complete the level, you have to avoid or defeat all the enemies along your way to the exit by either hitting them with your claw or jumping on their heads, Mario style. All the while collecting as many crystals as you can so that you could use those then later at the shops buying extra lives, credits, bigger jumps, speed-ups and other upgrades. Interestingly enough, there's quite a few secret areas to find and get to, and bonus stages too. It prolongs the stay of the title considerably, especially that most platformers tend to be extremely linear and repeatable, so games that take that extra step to add hidden sections are always something that I appreciate. Brian the Lion's presentation is really good, and no wonder, as it was developed by Reflections, the very same that made all the Shadow of the Beast games, that were well known as the graphical benchmarks for what the Amiga was capable of in the right hands. So sprites are large, nicely animated, and same can be said about backgrounds. They're rich, feature many objects that either animate or react to your character touching or walking over them, and numerous levels of parallax. It's great. Sounds and music are also appropriate to the type of the game that it is, but nothing above the Amiga average. Overall, Brian the Lion is a good game, but not a great one, and will never ever be one, simply because it fails on two major fronts when it comes to platforming design. It features regenerating enemies and, worst of all, many leap of faith jumps, where you have to trust your gut and hope for the best. It usually works out for the better, but not always. So yeah, it's a decent game that could be much better. Cedric and the Lost Sceptre is a side-view fantasy action platformer, and most importantly, a proof that the game with visuals close to those of Shadow of the Beast could also play great. Story-wise, you're Cedric, sadly a young nobody, but you're also madly in love with the princess. Since you're virtually unknown, however, the king sends you on a quest to prove your worth, so that you'd be good enough to earn her hand, you must find and retrieve King's Lost Sceptre. For the most part, Cedric is an action platformer in which you leap over obstacles, climb countless ladders, slide down the ledges, collect coins and even beat up various baddies and monsters, usually punching them into a pulp. But it's also a full-fledged adventure with all that it entails, so you'll meet various characters and speak with them too, learning of what to do next and where, and we'll even do some basic environmental puzzling. There is quite a few situations where it's necessary actually, and they're usually clearly indicated above our hero's head. There's 11 levels that you have to go through, and each of them is differently stylized and unique, and they all look rather pleasant. They often also pose different challenges, both puzzling and platforming wise, so you'll hardly ever get bored playing. All that said, Cedric is a difficult game to find its player, because while it's genuinely novel and entertaining, it's neither a perfect choice for a fan of platformers nor for an adventure lover. It sits somewhere in between, in an odd place, where its mixture of genres only ever appeals to a small subset of all gamers, which is also why it's perhaps as little known game as it is today, and why I should really have used it in my obscure Amiga games series. But if you're a person who doesn't fear new and change, it's definitely an experience to be had, and a game to steal a few good hours from you before you complete it. Team 17's Assassin Special Edition is what Amiga's ports of Strider should have been, but fell a bit short, and an upgraded and fixed version of the original Assassin that released 2 years prior. Everything that didn't work as intended, was broken, annoying or unfair in the first game, was ironed out, removed or polished, and we've ended up with a gem that's not in the rough anymore. Assassin Special Edition is a side-scrolling action platformer, Both games share identical story of having to go through few large stages with a goal of destroying of so-called Midan, a crazy evil villain bent on causing havoc and gaining power over the world that's basically within his grasp. It's worth mentioning that the original had an extra stage before the one the second game starts with, but it was cut, and for the life of me I can't tell you why. Perhaps because it featured dogs that you could kill. We'll never know. More importantly, in the first Assassin you started with a boomerang, which, if you think about it given the sheer scope of enemy forces you have to face, is not a weapon that guarantees any degree of success, and a rather shitty choice for an assassin that made the game borderline unplayable. This time, you begin with a laser. Now, laser gun is a seriously deadly apparatus of destruction, and can definitely make a serious dent in enemy lines way before you even change it for something bigger and better. And you will, cause there's a lot of weapons to find and use this time. The enemies are quite varied too, and it's a pleasure to best them all, feeling like a James Bond, John Rambo or any other generic 80s movies superhero doing so. While you go about it, you also get to collect gold stars, and getting 50 can activate a mega weapon, which is more powerful than anything else, and 99 rewards an extra life. Mega weapon, that sounds epic. Mega weapon. Yeah. Anyway, each level ends with a large boss, so it's best to save those super special mega weapons that I keep talking about for that occasion in particular. It's just a hint and not a rule, so do whatever your assassin's ass pleases to. Graphics and sounds are all Team 17 quality, meaning they're great but not the best. And while they could be improved at, no doubt about that, they're nothing to ever complain about. Overall, Assassin Special Edition is a more complete, even if shorter and easier package than original was, but also way more polished and rounded up experience that's now a fun rather than frustrating game it was before. So, with first episode out of the door, what do you think? Was it something you'd like to see more of? I've found quite a few exclusives already and there's tons more. Let me know in the comments below. If you liked the video, hit those like and subscribe buttons below. If you didn't, well then there's thumbs down there too. But I suppose you wouldn't have persevered up to this point if you really didn't. Around 60% of you are not subscribed, and there's currently no way of knowing if YouTube will decide to recommend you the next episode or not, other than subscribing and hitting that bell, that is. And when you hit that bell, whenever the new video is out, YouTube will actually send you a small and friendly notification about it, so you wouldn't miss it. If you'd like to support the channel, Patreon and YouTube memberships are a great way of doing so. They will help me release better content, and also they get first dibs on all new videos before they're publicly accessible on YouTube. If you can't or don't want to do that though, likes and subscribes are great too. I would like to take a moment here and thank all the YouTube creators from whose videos short bits were taken to serve as a background to my commentary. They're amazing and stars among the retro community. You will find names of their channels at the top of the screen when their footage is running, and also in the video description below. For me though, this is all, so have a good one and I'll see you next time. Peace.